My assessment is that the public expects the Workers' Party and the opposition in general to play a constructive role in Singapore politics.
A historic moment in Parliament today, Pritam Singh delivering his first speech as the official leader of the opposition.
New developments in a Singapore Group's takeover bid for football club Newcastle United. The deal reportedly looks to be in jeopardy.
And around the world, an outpouring of tributes to Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther star who died after a battle with cancer.
It's 5:30 p.m. here in Singapore and the start of a brand new week. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Haryanto Diman.
And I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Workers' Party Chief Pritam Singh making his debut speech as Singapore's first leader of the opposition today.
That's right. Speaking in Parliament, Mr. Singh set out his party's plans for this term.
Mr. Speaker, my Workers' Party colleagues and I will set our own standards and chart an independent course, just as my predecessor, Mr. Lau Tia Kiang, did, in the face of much resistance, including from many personalities in the opposition camp, as he sought to build a credible Workers' Party. The road ahead will not be easy, but anything worthwhile never is. We will do our best by Singapore and Singaporeans. But how much we can do and how much the political conversation evolves for the better will be driven by three things. One, by the quantity and the quality of information that is shared by the government in Parliament and separately released to the public more generally. Two, by the resources given by the government to analyse and use that information for the benefit of the public. And three, by the willingness of the government to listen to and implement the alternative ideas suggested.
As leader of the opposition, Mr. Singh will sit opposite Prime Minister Lim Yan Liang in Parliament, and he'll have the right to ask the lead question to ministers on policies, bills and motions subject to existing speaking convention and at the discretion of the Speaker of Parliament.
In another maiden speech, new MP and Second Minister for Manpower Tan See Leng said companies will not be allowed to deliberately discriminate against local workers, and the government expects businesses invest more in strengthening the Singaporean core. Labour MP Patrick Tay urged the Manpower Ministry to consider further raising the minimum pay for employment pass applicants for two sectors, Infocom Technology and Professional Services. Mr. Tay said these sectors generally have more companies on the Fair Consideration Framework watch list for potentially discriminatory hiring practices. Also speaking in Parliament today, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat spoke about the ways Singapore can emerge stronger as an economy after the COVID-19 crisis. He stressed that the country needs to stay true to its values as it adapts to the uncertainty and disruption.
It is essential that we rise above our differences and find common ground. Occasional setbacks need not trip us in our perseverance to continue to make progress. Harmony in diversity will always be a work in progress. We may not always agree, but we cannot afford to let our disagreements turn into division. Otherwise, change will cause a rupture in society, as we have seen elsewhere.
For more on the day in Parliament, we're joined by Assistant News Editor at the Straits Times, Lim Yan Liang. Yan Liang, Mr. Pritam Singh delivered his inaugural speech in Parliament as the official leader of the opposition. How was his presentation? Did his delivery live up to the expectations of an LO?
I think that by most accounts, Mr. Singh's speech did live up to Singaporeans' expectations of the leader of the opposition. In a way, it kind of mirrored DPM Heng Swee Keat's speech to the House, in that Mr. Singh laid out the ground rules for the opposition MPs in the House on what is expected of them, and also what he expects in the way that they engage the government and the government MPs. Yeah, and he went about it in a very systematic way by drilling into what he was in broad agreement with the government on, as well as the 5 broad areas in which the WP and PSP MPs would look to propose alternative policies and views on. So I think that by most accounts, it was a very good speech, and it laid out the way that the opposition would go about the next term of parliament under his leadership.
Delving deeper into the content of his address, Yan Liang, what stood out for you?
So the 5 broad areas that I mentioned are what we can all expect to be the focus, not just for the opposition, but for the government MPs in the next term of parliament. So the 5 areas are health and aging, jobs, business and economy, education, inequality and cost of living, and then there's housing and transport, as well as the longer term issue of sustainability of Singapore in its development. So we can see from these 5 areas that Mr. Singh is quite systematic in what he wants the WPMPs and of course the PSP and CMPs to look into, and also the hot button issues that are especially relevant given the COVID-19 pandemic. So earlier I also mentioned that he also agreed that the opposition under him will be a loyal opposition, loyal to Singapore and Singaporeans. So the way he went about that was to lay out the areas that he is in broad agreement with the government on, and also signaling that the opposition under his leadership will not oppose for the sake of opposition. So the areas that he agreed with the government on was Singapore's place in the world. No matter what kind of policy proposals the opposition puts up, it has to be rational, it has to take into place Singapore's standing in the world, its peculiar position in the world, its history as an open trading nation, and that in the areas of defense, foreign policy, and things like multiracialism, he was in broad agreement with the government on. So it's more on the nitty-gritty issues, things like work, the role of foreigners in Singapore's job market. These are the things that he feels that there is room for improvement and in which the opposition can propose alternatives.
Now, also delivering his speech today was Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat. He spoke about how Singapore must hold true to its values even as it adapts to change. Yan Liang, what values is Mr. Heng referring to that should be kept? And in the same vein, what sort of changes is he alluding to?
So the values that Singapore should keep, according to Mr. Heng, are the things that have stood Singapore well through its development. For instance, its openness, its welcoming to foreign investment and foreign talent, its multiculturalism, and also that ability to stand united no matter what are the challenges ahead. So while some countries might be turning inward because of the pandemic and the way it is its global impact on the economy, that Singapore should not go down that path. And when he talked about the ways that Singapore should adapt, he mentioned that even as we change our manpower policies, even as we strengthen the fair consideration framework, that the whole point about not turning inward, and also that we should strengthen that tripartism that has stood us well, which is the partnership between the government, businesses, and workers. So another thing that he said that we should, Singapore should redouble efforts to adapt would be the way we develop our people. It's not going to be you learn and then you go into the workforce. It's going to be lifelong learning. We must find new ways to develop everybody throughout their working years, and also to strengthen the ability to find new areas that we can develop and new bright spots that can become industry or sectors of the future that will serve the Singapore economy well.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Yan Liang, for the sharing. We were speaking to Assistant News Editor at the Straits Times, Lim Yan Liang. Now you can visit straitstimes.com for today's Parliament proceedings.
An update on the COVID-19 situation in Singapore. 41 new cases were confirmed today, including 3 community cases, which are all work pass holders.
There were also 7 imported cases who had been placed on stay-home notices upon arrival in Singapore. Singapore now has slightly over 56,800 cases, and the Health Ministry will share more details tonight.
In other local news, Singapore General Hospital has created a portable chambers that can be quickly converted into negative pressure isolation rooms to house patients with infectious diseases. The chambers can be fitted behind the entrance of a ward or ICU within hours and costs half as much as renovating an ICU room into an isolation room.
Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong will take the stand when his defamation trial against financial advisor Leong Zi-hian opens in the High Court in October. A spokesman for PM Lee said he will enter the witness box to give evidence and be cross-examined. The trial will take place from October 6th to 9th.
And more details are emerging of the incident in a cinema at Next shopping mall that left 2 women injured when a ventilation duct fell from the ceiling. A Straits Times reader said his son was there at the time with his 4 friends when they heard a loud cracking sound and thought it was just sound effects. Suddenly, a ducting unit with its pipes still attached dislodged from the ceiling and swung towards them. 2 of them were hit on the head by falling debris but were not seriously hurt. Now, in light of their questionable marketing material, Bellagraph Nova Group's bid to take over Premier League club Newcastle United looks in doubt. Over the weekend, Newcastle-based newspaper The Chronicle carried a report with its headline, "Mike Ashley ready to pull the plug on 2 bidders and make fresh search for investment this autumn." It said Newcastle is still up for sale, but current owner Mike Ashley has lost patience with 2 groups who say they want to buy the club.
Meanwhile, Catalyst-listed Axington, linked to the BN Group, today requested that trading in its shares be suspended before the stock market opened. It called for the voluntary suspension pending the release of an announcement in relation to strategic changes to be made in the business direction of the company.
Singaporean businessmen and cousins Nelson and Terence Low bought out Axington in July. Their business partner Evangeline Shen is Axington's non-independent, non-executive chairman. The Lows don't sit on the board.
From business to the political and sports desks, the Straits Times is following this story from many angles.
Journalist Suen Tan is one of the reporters covering this saga, and she joins us now. So Suen, in terms of corporate governance and transparency, is this BN Group case unusual, or is it getting a lot of attention because of its bid for a well-known Premier League club as well as the embarrassing discovery of the doctored Obama pictures?
Yes, in some cases it is unusual in the sense that the marketing came before the actual event. So for example, a company linked to BN Group called Axington, which is listed on the catalyst of SGX, they proposed that it will change its name to Next, and the move was supposed to be voted on by shareholders at an EGM last Thursday. So Axington is owned by the Low cousins, Terence Low and Nelson Low, and its non-independent, non-executive chairman is Miss Evangeline Shen, and all 3 are co-founders of the BN Group. But earlier, the company had sent out press releases on its new division Next, and even set up a website marketing the brand name. So corporate governance experts have said that this is like putting the cart before the horse, because it's something companies usually do not do when the company has not been officially renamed, because it might cause confusion among the investors and the general public. But these experts also added that it is not unusual for companies to sometimes exaggerate some of their claims for marketing materials. And it's up to the investors and also the media to do their due diligence. Another example is that BN Group said it was going to set up a luxury clinic in Bulgari Hotel Shanghai, but the Italian luxury brand actually denied that such a facility was going to happen and said that they had no connections to the BN Group or any of its affiliated entities. So I think the bid for Newcastle United Football Club definitely brought all these events into the spotlight.
Right. So when we understand that the Sunday Times spoke with Liam Kennedy, the British journalist who broke the story about BN Group's bid for Newcastle United. He said he was skeptical about the bid from the start. What were the alarm bells at the beginning?
So Mr. Kennedy actually told SP that there was what he called an air of unprofessionalism about the way BN Group went about things. So for instance, they sent out a statement with the contact details of each of the investors detailed in it. And he said this is far removed from usual practice. And he also said that Mike Ashley, who put up Newcastle for sale, is not even entertaining the bid, even though he's said to be desperate to sell the football club.
Wow. Okay. Well, Suen, it's also been reported that more people and organizations are disassociating themselves with the BN Group. So what happens now for the Low Cousins, their door private equity vehicle, as well as their other entities like BN Group and Axington?
So for now, Axington, which is the catalyst listed firm on SGX, said it would suspend the trading of its shares, and this was only this morning. They said this is pending the release of an announcement in relation to strategic changes to be made to the business direction of the company. Previously, which is last week, it had halted its trading pending an announcement as well. The firm also postponed the EGM where the shareholders were meant to vote on the name change to Next, and also they were meant to vote on a change in its core business, which is to providing medical and consumer wellness services and investments in medical technology, among other things. And last week, other events also happened, such as the former US ambassador to Singapore, Kirk Uwaga. He resigned from his position as Axington Independent Director. So now I think we just have to watch and wait and see what the announcement holds with regards to Axington.
Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today then, Sue-Ann. We've been speaking to journalist Sue-Ann Tan on the developing story on Terence and Nelson Low and their Singapore-based firm.
I'm Dylan Ang. Let's take a look at the global headlines. We begin with coronavirus updates. India yesterday recorded the highest single-day rise of COVID-19 cases in the world, with more than 78,000 new infections. The country is already the world's third most infected nation, behind the United States and Brazil. Over in New Zealand, Auckland exited its lockdown today, about 3 weeks after restrictions were reimposed earlier this month. The move sees schools and customer-facing businesses reopen, as well as the lifting of the ban preventing people from travelling out of the city. In tennis, according to French sports daily L'Equipe, Benoit Paire has become the first player to test positive for COVID-19 at the US Open, which kicks off today in New York. The French player had been scheduled to play his first match on Tuesday, but is now set to be replaced by Spaniard Marcel Granollers. MTV's Video Music Awards got underway earlier today in New York, one of the first live shows to be held since the coronavirus pandemic. Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande and BTS led the night, taking home 4 Moon People each. Along with Artist of the Year, Lady Gaga won the show's first Tricon Award for being an icon in music, fashion, acting and activism, and together with Ariana Grande, Best Collaboration and Song of the Year. Not to be forgotten, the Best Pop, Best K-Pop, Best Group and Best Choreography awards went to BTS. And a 3-year-old girl in Taiwan is safe after becoming caught in the strings of a kite and lifted several meters into the air. She was taking part in a kite festival when she was caught up by a giant long-tailed orange kite. Video shot at the scene showed her twisting several times above a crowd for about half a minute before coming back to earth into outstretched hands. And those are the headlines from around the world. It's back to you guys in the studio.
Over the weekend, tributes poured in for late actor Chadwick Boseman. Now celebrities, fans and politicians took to social media to remember Boseman as well as the impact he had on them. Now, if you remember, he's best known for bringing Marvel's first black superhero Black Panther to life.
The announcement of Boseman's death from colon cancer was made on his social media accounts, including Twitter, on Saturday morning, Singapore time. And according to Twitter, the tweet is now the most liked of all time. The tweet, which held that status before, was from former US President Barack Obama's account.
Yesterday, Mr. Obama posted a picture of him and Boseman when the actor went to the White House. Mr. Obama wrote about how the actor had made good use of his years.
US Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris tweeted, "Heartbroken, my friend and fellow Bison Chadwick Boseman was brilliant, kind, learned and humble."
Angela Bassett, who played Boseman's mother in Black Panther, wrote about how their paths crossed. Now, his fellow actors in the Marvel franchise also expressed their grief over the loss of their good friend.
Well, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler penned an emotional tribute as well, recounting their time working together on the movie.
Now, people also posted photos of their kids donning the Marvel superhero costume, doing the Wakanda Forever salute with their arms, and posing with their action figures.
Well, that's it from us on today's Big Story. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.